Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Rutgers Rant, brought to you by the Heldridge. We thought this would be a very exciting, a very special Rutgers Rant. Instead, I'm a bit sad. That's the word I would use. Actually, you know what the words I would use? That Rutgers turned down a shot to go to the Birmingham Bowl. Shocked and disappointed, Brian. And here's why. These are the two words I use. Shocked, because I never in a million years thought that Gregory Edward Schiano would say no to bonus football. Like, I never thought that was possible. That just never occurred to me. Like, he's a guy, you want your loved ones to look at you the way he looks at a December 26th bowl game, right? Like, you want that. It never occurred to me that he would say no, number one, so I'm shocked. And number two, I'm disappointed because I thought that would be like, 3 weeks on this show we didn't have to talk about the basketball team. So there's my take. Otherwise, probably right. Probably the right thing to do.
There's a lot to go off of there. First of all, I know you are truly shocked because you said his actual middle name. You didn't invent some name like you usually do.
I did not call him. Yes, that's true.
You call him Gregory Michael this time. This is legitimate shock on your part. Second of all, 15 minutes before it was officially noted that Rutgers declined this bowl, I said that Greg Schiano would play a bowl game in Siberia against 12 bears if he was allowed to. So I share your shock. I literally had spent 20 minutes before it was officially done writing a preview scouting report on Georgia Southern because I was convinced it was going to happen. If anyone is curious about the Eagles, by the way, shoot me an email. I'll send you my scouting report for free. Appalachian State, the team that ended up taking the bowl bid, it's all yours. Shoot me an email. No charge. And the other thing is, like, I'm not personally sad about this, but I can understand longtime fans feeling sad about this, that the game is gone. Bowl games have been irrelevant for a while now, but this is even more proof of like these exhibition games that are there just to stuff inventory for television and give degenerate gamblers a couple more hits of the gambling bug before the end of the football season are essentially wastes of time for everyone, wastes of money. And finally, we've decided that they're not worth sabotaging an off-season preparation to kind of bust your way to Birmingham and play a game that, nobody really cares about.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's why this was the right decision on a lot of levels. And I kind of jokingly say he always would say yes. He said yes to the Gator Bowl 4 years ago under very different circumstances. The Gator Bowl, first and foremost, a much better bowl, a much better destination, a real opponent, a real time slot. It was a higher quality thing. Earlier in the program development wise, I think he recognized that it was an opportunity to reward a lot of guys who stuck it out with him. I mean, there was a reason to do this. Now you're looking at it differently. You're looking Birmingham, which I think everyone who has gone to every bowl, and I'm not one of them. I've not gone to every Rutgers bowl. I think there would be a unanimity about that being the worst of the bowls that Rutgers, the 2008 Birmingham Bowl champions. It was just a terrible experience based on when people it was the papajohns.com bowl. They ran out of pizza, fans on half the stadium. I didn't go. I just hearing stories about this. It was kind of legendary for how bad it was. The stadium's fallen down. I don't think they've fixed it since then. It's been, I can imagine what it looks like 17 years later. So yeah, a lot of reasons not to do it. You fire your defensive staff. I mean, so you'd have to deal with coaches. 4 important players have opted out. There's just a lot of reasons to say no. I think the biggest one, though, Brian, tell me if you agree. I think the biggest reason to say no is quite simply you have to focus all of your attention now on these two things, and that's the transfer portal and the defensive coordinator hire. Like, you should not be distracted. You should not have even a minute of your time spent trying to prepare for a Georgia Southern team that's probably really wants to play the game. So I think that to me is the biggest reason why this is an important month.
Consider 12 months ago, Greg Schiano is coordinated defense for a team playing against, a pretty dynamic offensive Kansas State. He's trying to fill the defensive coordinator spot. He's trying to get the transfer portal thing sorted out. It was a little bit more complicated last year because the transfer portal was open now and not in January. So that would be a lot lighter of a load, but still you're figuring that stuff out. So you're figuring out your roster for next year. You're not going to have a full team because guys are, like you said, 4 players have already said they're going to enter the transfer portal. Multiple players have had their offseason, surgeries, cleanups, whatever have you. I don't think anyone's having any major surgery that we don't know about, but like guys are just kind of cleaning stuff up from around the year, and they might not be able to take advantage of the 15 practices the mythical 15 practices you get for playing in a bowl game. And like, do those 15 practices matter as much as they used to 20 years ago when you don't know how many of these guys are even going to be on your roster in a year, right? So outside of AJ Serays, he is the only person I think would benefit greatly from those 15 practices and a game against Georgia Southern. And to your point, it does feel like the list of reasons not to go is infinitely longer than the reasons to go. Like, I would love to hear 2 good reasons why Rutgers should play this game other than it's a possibility and they want to play football. But the biggest thing is you made the great comparison, right? Rutgers was down here and the Gator Bowl was up here. It would be really dumb to not want to play Wake Forest in the Gator Bowl the second year under Greg Schiano. Now, Rutgers is right about here. We can argue they're in this vicinity, and the Birmingham Bowl is down here. If Rutgers scheduled Georgia Southern for a September home game, people would be like, oh my God, Greg Schiano only plays tomato cans. Can he please get a real opponent at home? And now not everyone, but there are people that are upset Rutgers said no. Are we really going to get busted up that Rutgers isn't playing the 4th best team in the East Division of the Sun Belt in Birmingham, Alabama on December 28th?
Are there people who are upset? Like, I haven't gotten that. People are surprised. I haven't gotten the upset sense from people. I could be completely wrong. Have you seen it? Have you seen, like, how could they pass this opportunity up? I don't gotten a lot of that. I mean,
so maybe upset is too strong of a word. There are, there are the group of people that will be upset if Greg Schiano has an apple for breakfast and ask why he's not eating a banana, right? There are those people that are just angry at everything. But there are people, the traditionalists, that say, why not go to a bowl game? Why not get the practices? Why not have one more game? Why not give the seniors one more opportunity to play? And I think some of that is just nostalgia of what college football used to be. Yes. College football is very different, nowadays. For Rutgers to have the opportunity to say yes or no to that game, Iowa State, Kansas State, Notre Dame, Florida State, Auburn, Baylor, all had to say no, right? Can you imagine being the 8th person in that line to be like, you know what, I'll take it? And to add to that, after Rutgers said no, Temple, a team that hasn't been to a bowl game in 8 years, a team that you would think would die to play a football game, they said no. Really? Can you imagine being the teams that they had to go so down far the list that Appalachian State, who played them a month ago, they're in the same league. They were the only team that said
how many people? Do we have a number? How many people said no? I didn't realize it kept on going. I stopped paying attention shortly after Rutgers said no. So,
well, before Rutgers got to say no, I think after Rutgers said no, Temple was the only one after Rutgers.
All right, then Appy State was after that. Okay, so about 10 teams said no. Wow.
Yes. Well, Notre Dame said no to stick it to ESPN because they weren't going to fill the coffers. Well, they're throwing a bit of a temper tantrum because they thought wrongfully they should have been in the playoff.
Oh,
and they didn't
wow. Well, there's a topic we could talk about wrongfully. Okay, I can keep going. I didn't mean to interrupt. Okay.
All good. I mean, Notre Dame did not belong in the field. It's between them and Miami. Miami beat them in a football game this season. Why on earth should they be in over Miami? It doesn't make any sense. Notre Dame beat nobody. They beat one good team in USC, and the 2 other good teams they played, they lost to. Okay? If you wanted to be in over Miami, just beat Miami. Or join a conference. I'm tired of Notre Dame being babied by the college football establishment because they were the only team on TV 40 years ago. It's an embarrassment. And I'm Notre Dame fans get very upset about all of this. They're very, very passionate.
You're
and they
fired up too. You're passionate about it. I love it.
Well, I got killed every time I ranked Notre Dame one spot lower than everyone else last year. I was a Notre Dame hater, anti-Catholic, accused of all these things. Like, anyway, the point, we're straying off the path here. Notre Dame said no in a temper tantrum, getting back at ESPN. Good for them, because everyone knows money talks. All that matters is money talks. ESPN getting shafted this way, losing millions of dollars by Notre Dame not playing. That's the only way you make an impact. And now they have a clause in their contract, apparently, that if the same scenario plays out next year, they're automatically in the field, which is – anyway. So Notre Dame says no. Iowa State says no because they changed their coach. Kansas State says no because their coach retired. Which, by the way, complete aside, the Chris Kleiman situation, like, that's the only way I see Greg Schiano, if it gets really, really bad, leaving. Like, Chris Kleiman retired, right? He was probably going to get fired in a year or two, right? So he saw the forest for the trees. So before he can get fired, he retired. I'm saying this only in the way – I only bring this up because I don't think Greg Schiano will ever get fired. I don't think so. But if it ever gets to a point where it looks like the administration wants to change, I think he would retire. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
And what do you think about that?
No, I think it does make sense. Yes, but right. I don't. Yeah, I'm not. I haven't thought it through yet, so I'm not ready to go there. That it'd be an apples to apples situation with Kansas State. But I understand what you're saying. Absolutely. Yes.
I don't think we're near that point yet. But I'm just saying, I want to be right. So if we're in the same spot 3 years from now,
right,
I can call my shot. The way I called my shot with Rutgers basketball being Seton Hall this year. We'll get to that later.
If we're still in the same spot 3 years from now, we both need better agents. Can we say that? Just kidding.
All of us need better agents. Yes.
Anyway, the bowl game, right?
Yeah, Rutgers made the right choice not going to a bowl game. I mean, I'll ask you because it's been going through my head. Why would Rutgers play in this game? Like, what is a good reason for Rutgers to play in this game?
Well, that's it. Yeah, it is the experience for the players. It's getting reps for if AJ Schrace is really going to be your starting quarterback next year, and you approach this as completely a scrimmage for him, and I'm not sure they would, because you've got a senior who really likes playing football, and Hayden McManus who might not say, I'll step aside. But if that's what you're going to do, then yeah, that's one reason. That is the biggest one reason. Evaluate the other side of the guys in the roster, give them playing time. If treated completely as a scrimmage, get some exposure, TV. Those are the reasons. The problem is, as you mentioned, and this is really a good point. We have no idea defensively who's going to be on this team when they open the season late August next year. We have no clue what this defense is going to look like. I mean, I think it's going to be at least, five starters from the portal. You're going to have to, I think there's going to be a ton. I think it is going to be significantly different coordinator, different everything. So you're getting nothing really from that side of the football. So other than getting your quarterback some reps, I think they've got to feel good about him at this point, or they wouldn't have come this far along with him. That it wouldn't, that's not enough reason to do it. Totally. I agree 100%. Yeah.
Normally I would say that he would get better preparation in practice against the Big Ten defense than a Georgia Southern defense with the defense he played all year this year. I'm not sure I would quite agree with that sentiment. Now, the other thing that we forgot to mention, which is also, the brass tacks reason not to do this, teams lose money playing in a bowl game.
Yes, right.
You lose a lot of money.
Yeah, but we've stopped. Yeah, let's face it. We've stopped worrying about losing money a long time ago here at Rutgers. There is no amount of money that this football program could lose where, I don't think that was a consideration. But you're 100% right. There would have been a headline. Here's what Rutgers spent on the Birmingham Bowl. And it would be a big fat 7-digit loss, because they're going to have to eat tickets, have to eat travel, eat hotels. Yeah, no one's going to go to it. Absolutely. That is a factor. I mean, a reasonable thing for a normal person who is not aware of what college education has become at that level to say, hey, what about all this money you're spending on this crappy bowl? Yes, 100%. Yeah.
And this is a point where you need as much money as possible to fill the $20.5 million or whatever in revenue sharing, right? Like, I know we joke about Rutgers spending money, like it's going out of style, but like you do need the money. There's not infinite money. And I don't think there's any worry about that not fulfilling the revenue share money, but right. I don't want to say Rutgers is penny pinching, but Rutgers should really maximize every dollar they have, and spending, 7 figures to play Georgia Southern in a bowl game in Birmingham 3 days after Christmas.
Yes.
With maybe 1,000 fans would travel to that.
That's on the list. That's on the list. That's like 13th or 14th as reasons that to turn it down. But yes, absolutely. Totally. Yeah. I think this, and I do think this is the biggest reason for me, the portal, and that's a good transition to what's happening here, because we did not talked about the staff changes on defense. I think the reason why we haven't, it wasn't a 5-alarm, hey, oh my God, we got an emergency podcast, because it was the most obvious thing in the world that he was going to fire these coaches. I think it happened sooner than I would have expected. I think probably happened, got out sooner than they expected. I think that this was a different leak than we usually get with leaks from Rutgers. I think clearly it got out sooner than they might have wanted. Not just the two coordinators. Zach Sparber is the other coordinator's name. I've looked it up in the time since we had the last podcast, who's making a lot of money on the way out the door for 8 months of work at Rutgers. Good for you, Zach, and your agent. I'm impressed. Rob Smith and the defensive line coach all gone. I mean, I don't know. Do we even have to kind of discuss the why there, Brian? I think it's kind of obvious the why. It's the what's next for me.
Yeah, look, I was a bit surprised Sparber was let go because he has kind of the wonderkind. He's a young guy. Maybe you mold him. I guess they don't see enough to mold, or he is perhaps attached at the hip to Rob Smith. I mean, Rob Smith is why he's here. Maybe you just want to flush any sentiment of Rob Smith out of the building. Get the voodoo out of there and start the clean slate. Colin Farrell is not a surprise because he his contract was over. So, and the defensive line, as we've talked ad nauseum, has been underperforming for about a decade now. So maybe you want to start something new there. So no, I'm not surprised. I guess the bigger question is who is next? And we could talk about that because probably the two hottest young candidates on the market are going to Syracuse and Nebraska respectively. Yeah. And the one guy I thought would be 1A, the most Greg Schiano choice possible, Joe Rossi, is apparently staying at Michigan State. Joe Rossi, laugh about it or not, would be great because if he was fired, he would be owed $1.6 million, right? So in theory, you'd be able to lowball offer him maybe $800,000, and he wouldn't care because he's getting the rest of that salary from Michigan State anyway. Yeah. But that's all for naught because in the time between Rob Smith getting fired and the show, he's being retained by Michigan State. So now I'm out of who's the guy? I don't know.
Yeah, and I will. Yeah, totally, 100%. And I will say that. Syracuse, who hired Vince Karras, is the guy's name from Toledo, who was the hot candidate, who interviewed at Nebraska as well. That to me was what I wanted Rutgers to do. Right? Like this is like what I still want Rutgers to do is to go out and get someone whose name I have to Google. Like I don't want to know. I'm joking about like I don't want to have a photo on file of whoever this person is. Like and he was here in 2007. Like I don't want to be able to say that. Like right, let's get somebody new. And I know like that seems like why does it have to be someone new? Because I want fresh ideas. I want proof that Greg Schiano sees what I see and what I think a lot of people see. Whereas it's not just talent on defense. It's sort of stale concepts. It's sort of the feeling like all right, it could benefit from new ideas. Like things haven't really evolved here. That the head coach is too involved in this. That he needs to be the CEO. He needs to step away from it. And that means to me hiring the best available defense coordinator. I'm not worried about what kind of defense he's running. I want someone who's going to be adaptable to the talent. I also recognize that whoever the defensive coordinator is, if you hire him soon enough, he can help you pick the talent, right? Like you're going to go out and you're going to hire a new defensive line. You're going to hire, back end players. You're going to build this defense. This is why you can't wait like they did last time with Rob Smith. You can't drag this out. They really need to find someone before the portal opens, I think, because the other side of this, if you are one of these players coming in with options, you're going to, of course, want the biggest paycheck. That's what these guys are going to be looking for in the portal. But I think if you're smart and you're a defensive end in the portal, you want to know what the new guy's going to run, who your coordinator is going to be. So this has got to get done pretty quickly. And I see what these other programs like Nebraska, like Syracuse, like they're really aggressively going out and interviewing and hiring and targeting people out there. I hope that's what's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah, I was surprised Syracuse was the pick. I thought Nebraska would make more sense, or even he was the next head coach in waiting at Toledo. He could have been the head coach there. Yep. I understand being a DC is probably a better job than a mid-major.
It's a good mid-major though. It's a good program. I mean,
right, but you're essentially in the Joe Harris-Simiak situation where he ends up going to UMass to be a head coach, and I'm sure he would have had a much better time being the DC at Rutgers last year than he was being the coach of an 0-12 football program. Speaking of Joe Harris-Simiak, the one time Greg Schiano hired a guy this time around that he didn't previously have under him at Rutgers, that was their best defense when you had Joe Harris-Simiak and Corey Heatherman leading the way. So right. I see your point, and I think I agree with you. I am unsure if Greg Schiano is going to be willing to just have carte blanche with a new guy and say, here, you make your defense. I think it's always going to be Greg Schiano's defense, and it's going to be a matter of who can, maybe you throw in a little interesting twists or not, but I just think the base of the defense is going to have Schiano's fingerprints all over it because that's been the case his entire time here, right? So I wonder how much that will make this an attractive job as a defensive coordinator, but I do think it'll happen quicker. One, because of all the points you said, it's prudent that you make this as quick as possible so you have a guy in place when the portal opens. Obviously, money's the most important thing, right? Kids care a lot more about how much they're getting paid than the coach they're playing under. That's just the reality, but it's helpful to have a vision to sell. And two, there's just less distractions this year. Where again, last year Greg Schiano was coaching the defense, preparing a bowl game, evaluating the portal, talking to kids to not leave the program, to stay in the program. And then I think the DC was probably on the back burner at that point. So I don't know if they waited last year so much as there was a lot to do and there were a lot of candidates that said no. This year, I think you got to be hopeful that your first couple of choices say yes. And if they don't, you move on quickly and find a guy. Our friends at the Night Report said the over-under at Christmas. What do you think? Over-under, before or after Christmas, they have a DC?
Oh man, that's tough. I just because of how this has gone in the past, I'm going to say over, but it should be under. I mean, that should be the goal. Absolutely. Yeah, no, totally. I don't know. I'd be very interested to see if it goes on longer than that, and especially if it drags into January. I think we've got some issues. All right, let's go into the portal losses before we get into the portal comings or the players coming and going. I don't think we're another year where we have not had a guy where we're like, oh my God, I can't believe they lost so and so. I was surprised about Jordan Walker because he certainly was a significant player. He's a guy we talked to a lot, and I think we'll like him. We could end up. He's a great interview. He's a nice dude. Helped us with some stories. So when you see him go, you're like, oh shoot, like that's too bad. I guess when you think it through, like when you take a step back and you're looking at this position of need, he's a useful player, but he was not certainly a game changer on defensive line. He was sort of an average defensive lineman. I guess this could be a two-way street. Rutgers might be looking to upgrade at that position. He might be looking for a place where he can, get one more paycheck that Rutgers wasn't willing to give. I do not know the circumstances here. I certainly don't think this is a situation where they're like, oh no, Jordan, wait. I don't get that. I don't get that sense from this.
He started the first 5 games and then came off the bench the rest of the way. So the writing was a bit on the wall there. I think he has one more year of eligibility, so he's going to want to play somewhere. And I think Rutgers is going to want someone. I think he would be a useful, backup rotational guy, but he cannot be your starting defensive end in the Big Ten. It's just, he's a great story. Right. He's playing better and at a better level than anyone could have expected when he walked on as a wide receiver. But if you want to compete in the Big Ten, if you want to fix the defensive line's issues, you need someone better than Jordan Walker, who, he led the team in sacks last year before this year. He had 1 sack this year on a historically tough defense. So I think this is mutually beneficial. He'll go somewhere, probably a lower end Power 4 team, high end, G5 team, but play a lot. And Rutgers will, in an ideal world, have more snaps to give to someone who is at a higher level. At the very least, an Eric O'Neill level, you have to hope a little bit better than that. But as we've talked about ad nauseum, the market's going to be very competitive for those kinds of players.
Yeah. And I guess we haven't seen anybody else in the portal who would be concerned, like the running backs, Sam Brown, CJ Campbell. Look at it from their standpoint. Antoine Raymond, you're giving him 40 carries a game. If you're a running back, get the hell out of here. Like, I'm surprised Ja'Shawn Benjamin's still on the team. Like, if I were any of those kids, you'd be like, all right, if he's coming back, clearly I'm not going to see the ball. So I totally understand that from their perspective. That makes a lot of sense. Both receivers still in the fold. Haven't heard any rumblings there, which is good news. KJ Duff and Ian Strong. So far, all the players that you would have wanted to keep on the team are still on the team.
The running back stuff is a good sign because it means Antoine Raymond is probably staying. I know he was the most likely to stay of the 3, guys we've touched on between him, KJ Duff, and Ian Strong. But those 2 guys leaving is a great sign, a good sign, I should say, in that direction. Sam Brown, feel terrible for the kid because in his freshman season, that Indiana game, he looked like the future. Yeah. He was ahead of Kyle Monangai on the pecking order, but just couldn't stay healthy and some real bad luck with those injuries. So he has 1 more year left. They redshirted him this year. I don't know if with an eye on him transferring or not, but to give him that extra year. And I think he'll have a chance to go somewhere, a Temple level, and have a good last year with a lot of snaps to end his college career. Ja'Shawn Benjamin, I agree with you because Greg has publicly said like he's had to have conversations with him last offseason to kind of tell him that there will be a role for him. There wasn't much of a role for him this year. So I wonder if he stays. I cannot imagine Rutgers goes into the portal and gets another CJ Campbell because that would just be bad for him. So I think they're probably set at running back. unless Deshaun Benjamin decides to leave. And then CJ Campbell, it made sense. He got hurt. Probably going to want to play somewhere else, knowing that Antoine Raymond's going to get 1,000 carries. And then Dane Partridge, we hardly knew he came in during training camp. Didn't count against the 105 because he was already designated as a student athlete for Northern Illinois. So it was essentially a flyer. And then he barely played, didn't return a single. Coming to Rutgers as a kick returner is kind of like, I don't have an analogy in my head, but you know what I'm saying.
No, Kevin Fine came up with the analogy on our Discord where it's like owning a lawnmower when you have artificial turf. That's what it is. That's what you're the landscaper at a mini golf course. That's what it is.
Exactly. So look, it's still early. The portal doesn't open for another month, January 2nd, right? So I think things will heat up the week leading up to that, and then the first week, obviously. But everything is kind of happening now behind the scenes as far as conversations. There's back channel conversations. Programs are having their front offices look and evaluate players, as Greg alluded to in his National Signing Day presser. Like, they're doing all their calculations now. And then January 2nd will be like a bomb setting off and everything happening. But I don't know how much more we'll hear in the next coming weeks. I wouldn't be surprised if a couple more guys announce their intentions, but I think the bulk of it will come on the 2nd.
Right. I didn't want to miss this because it also happened last week, and I have to give a sky point to my man Todrick Hunter. There's been a lot of times over the last few months where I wish I could have called up Todrick and asked him what the hell's going on. This was certainly one of them. And I took it as a good sign for Rutgers that they had a couple flips in their direction. On signing day, get a 3-star corner, Devontae Anderson out of Louisville, a place that clearly has a payroll, and a 4-star safety with a coaching change, Messiah Tilson out of Kentucky. And I think that to me, I could be wrong reading in this a little bit, but I think that does show that Rutgers has some resources. I don't think you flip a 4-star safety even with a coaching change if you're not willing to invest in that position. I also think both of those, reading the tea leaves, I think those guys probably see a situation in the Rutgers secondary where there's playing time available, even for true freshmen, which might be the case. There could be a lot of shakeups there, personnel-wise. So I thought that was interesting and probably a good sign.
Yeah, they were recruiting those guys for a long time, had them on official visits in June, didn't get them the first time around, but stayed on them. Greg Schiano was calling Devontae Anderson Saturday night after the Penn State game. So clearly it was a priority to get those kids. And I don't know about playing time as a true freshman, but even to your point, actually, Kosh Sanders started at safety as a true freshman and played a lot of snaps. And that's a position that obviously Rutgers needs a lot of help in. But even if you don't play as a true freshman, you see, like, as a redshirt freshman, as a sophomore, Bo Maskell played a lot of snaps as a redshirt freshman on a decent defense last year. So, it's there. And Greg Schiano's obviously a DB guru and all that stuff. And I do think that Rutgers is still emphasizing high school recruiting, maybe more than these other programs. Louisville has a lot of payroll, but they're spending a lot of money on the transfer portal on the back end of on the back end of development. Because, for example, Wesley Bailey and Renee Conga, those were 3-star guys Rutgers took in, developed, and then Louisville took the fruits of that labor and brought it in. Whereas I think Rutgers is more of a front-end development team. They get kids from high school and develop them and hope to retain them, like Kyle Monungai and et cetera, et cetera. And then the Kentucky thing just worked out because they fired Mark Stoops, and Messiah Tilson had a bit of a shaky situation, and Rutgers did what a good recruiting program does. They swooped in, they convinced them on the last day. And I do think that some of the money does play a part in this, right? I do think Rutgers was able to pony up and be competitive, if not better than Kentucky. I think it would be foolish to not assume that's part of it.
Right. Yes. And we don't know. This is another one of the many things we don't know. And I think we do know, if you look at the recruiting rankings, that the schools that are paying the most for high school talent, Southern Cal is one that jumps up. You read stories about, Google that if you want to read some stories about that #1 recruiting class in the country for a reason. They're investing in high school talent. It's trickier to do, obviously, because you don't know. Rutgers still, I think they were happy with this recruiting class in the 30s. What was Greg Schiano? What were your takeaways listening to him talk about this?
Yeah, he's high on the class. I think that it's worth noting that Whitey Collier, their top recruit in what would have been the 26 class, he reclassified, and he's going to have a chance to have a role next year. So, it's all accounting at the end of the day. It doesn't really matter. But if he stayed in this 26 class, it'd be even higher. He said he liked, I think, was it speed, ability to run, length. Like they have all the physical attributes you want in a class. Quarterback thing was interesting. They want to take a quarterback every year and kind of, because that's what I asked them. Like, is this the ideal scenario? You have a guy like AJ Serace starting from here on out, and then you have guys in the wings developing. So you're not going into the portal and competing with every program in the country for a starting quarterback. And he said that the ideal is you get a quarterback per year, you have quarterback competitions, and whoever wins starts. I think we all expect AJ Serace to win, obviously, but the sentiment is a good. Mm-hmm. When you look at this class, the clear position that will impact early is wide receiver between Daisir Carter and Elias Koch. We've seen the KJ Duff, Ian Strong formula. Each of those guys played early and obviously made a huge impact as sophomores. And those kids are two of the more talented kids in the class, and they can play early.
Right. And that would be a good way to save some cash, because that's a position they've dipped in and gotten at DT Sheffield, and they've spent some money in the portal on that position, so they don't have to. Then they can spend it elsewhere. So that's playing some money ball here.
Well, Daisir Carter is a slot guy, and those were the two guys, DT Sheffield and Diamond Miller. They were slot guys. If he's able to play at a high level as a true freshman, and he's a kid that committed to Rutgers in July of 2024. So 14 straight months he was committed to Rutgers, or 16 straight months committed to Rutgers. Had a lot of schools after him. He's a 4-star kid, highly ranked in Virginia, and he stayed. I mean, it's a credit to Demir Shaw, who recruited him. It's a credit to Greg Schiano, and it's a credit to him probably seeing the opportunity to play early, because I don't think you stay that steadfast locked into a program without seeing the opportunity in front of you.
Right. Absolutely. All right. So one more football topic before we take questions, and then after questions, we'll do basketball then, I guess. People want to stay to the very end. What? People want to stay to the very end. Get the last 3 minutes of basketball. But we have to talk about Penn State, because I thought for a minute there was a hot minute. And it was one of my favorite things on Twitter in 2025. You sent me the list of, what was it, Kalshi, or one of those crazy odd sites that had the two of the top 3 odds people for this job, for the Penn State job. Brian Dable was like, well, that's an easy column for me. Failed Giants coach, becomes Penn State coach. And then third in the odds, Kyle Flood. And I'm like, well, there is no easier column in the history of column writing than Kyle Flood becoming the head coach at the school that he wouldn't name when he was head coach here. Like, you remember he played that game, like the school from out east or whatever the hell he said, pretending he was Woody Hayes. Yeah. And they didn't hire one of those womp womp. Instead, they got like the guy who they should have gotten from the start if they were smart, Matt Campbell, who's just a really good football coach. Yeah, I mean, just did more with less at Iowa State. I guess now he's going to do more with more at Penn State. There's always a danger that guys don't make that transition well. But still, given what this could have been, man. I mean, Pat Kraft he stepped in it at the end. I knew it did really remind me of the Rutgers athletic director search, which, for a while you're like, what a flaming bag of poop on your front steps. And then, oh, here's Kelly Zinn, right? Like that's kind of what it reminded me of.
I think it's a perfect comparison, because you're talking about Terry Smith having a legit shot. You're talking about, I mean, if Kyle Flood is even in the vicinity, I think my big takeaway is that Kalshi and these prediction markets are all a pile of horse dung or whatever. I mean, it's these things should be regulated out of business and all that good stuff. But anyway, Kyle Flood was probably more likely to be the UConn coach. There was some reporting from Richie O'Leary that he was interested in the job.
Got that job? Is that over?
Well, Jason Candle from Toledo took the job.
Oh,
which is why the Toledo
okay.
DC was going to be the next head coach if he wanted to be. There was just no universe. If Penn State hired Kyle Flood, they should shut the program down. Frankly, I mean, it just doesn't. The guy couldn't win at Rutgers, so he's going to win at Penn State. Anyway. It's a good hire. Matt Campbell has created a really high floor at Iowa State. He's won more with less. I do wonder if he's going to be able to overcome the James Franklin hump of like getting good enough but not being able to take the next step, because at Iowa State he did peak, right? I think he won. Did he even win a Big 12 championship? I know he played in a game or two.
I don't know.
I don't even know if he won one, right?
I mean, it's a hard job though, man. Come on.
I understand that. My point is that Penn State is a hard job because their expectations are be Ohio State when you're not Ohio State. So I think it's a good hire. If you want to see like incredible spin, there was a report. I wish I had the name on top of my head, but it's probably best that this reporter doesn't know I'm speaking about this. There's like a spin that like Penn State actually looked at Matt Campbell early in the coaching search, but they tried to contact him and they called his old agent, and his old agent didn't pass the number along. Or, I mean, come on. What are we 10 years old? Was I born yesterday? Come on.
I love it. That's great. Who knows? I mean, crazy stuff's happened.
Come on. Penn State was interested in Matt Campbell, but they couldn't talk to him until the 50th day in the search after everyone said no. I mean, what are we doing? Like,
yeah,
all's well that ends well.
Believe.
Because it probably didn't happen. But all's well that ends well. I think if you're a Big Ten fan, a fan of a Big Ten school that's going to play Penn State, you're probably kicking some dirt, kicking some rocks, because you were hoping that they would bungle this process, and they almost did. But somehow, some way, they got a decent coach.
Man, that's a shame. That was yeah. It looked like that was going to be a big hot flaming mess. But oh well. Once again, Penn State pulls it out. All right. We got some more Big Ten questions here from the Discord and from Twitter and from everyone. Thank you for chiming in with questions. This is one I got from 3 different people in the business, Brian. So this is not one of our normal questions, but people who are like looking what's happening, saw the upset. I think it was upset Indiana beating Ohio State. And the question, some variation of it was, hey, is Cignetti a problem for Greg Schiano? And I found this interesting because we've talked about this a million times, but the fact that there are people who follow this, not like, they're not college football writers. It's not, Nicole Auerbach who's sending this, but people who don't follow this closely, who see Indiana at 13-0 and think immediately, well, they were worse than Rutgers 2 years ago. How come, is that a problem for Greg Schiano? And I wonder if that is, even if it's not, even if we know the reasons and we understand, and Google it and you'll see Mark Cuban money. I wonder if people out there, reach the same conclusion. Is it a problem?
Cignetti is a problem for every coach that isn't coaching a top 10 program. I mean,
that's a good way of putting it.
The guy, he had a miracle. What he's doing in Indiana is a miracle. Right. So now everyone thinks that their program could suddenly have a miracle. Right. It's so shocking because of how incredible it is. Right. And if it was that easy for every program to do that. Right. Someone tweeted out the list of losingest programs in college football history. Indiana was number 1. That's the famous thing why Cignetti's thing is so miraculous.
Yeah.
Number 2 is Northwestern. Number 3 is Rutgers. Do you think that in Northwestern, they're like, oh my God, Dave Braun, is he going to be able to do the same thing at Northwestern as Cignetti? I think anyone that doesn't have unrealistic expectations knows that doing what Cignetti did is impossible. It's just never going to happen again. Unless, again, you have very, very, very rich alums that buy into the vision. But it is a problem for Schiano and coaches in the part of the fan bases and outside observers who don't really have a concept of what is happening, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yes. I will say this, and it was a really good comment in the Discord, and forgive me, I think MB or someone put it in there and just seemed like it was an educated take about it. And it was that last year's Indiana team, there was more smoke and mirrors. And this year's Indiana team is the real deal. And I kind of buy that based on what I've seen, I mean, that looked like a really good top level defense. The quarterback's probably going to win the Heisman Trophy. So he's really good. We've seen what the receivers can do. I mean, the NFL quality playmakers, I don't know. I mean, that might absolutely be right. That last year was sort of like, that was the year where they were faking it a little bit. Certainly they had resources. They had a lot of talented players. Obviously, you don't get to the playoff if you don't. But this is the year where really they are the number 1 seed for a reason. And I'm not going to pick them, but I wouldn't be surprised if they won the whole thing.
So MB is Mike Broadbent from the Night Report podcast.
It was MB. Okay.
Yes. He was. So yes, it's credible information. And I see that because Indiana had the easiest schedule in the Big Ten last year. They beat every team they should beat, and they lost to Ohio State.
Yep.
And I mean, they had Curtis Rourke as their quarterback. It's not like Curtis Rourke is, he's playing like a torn ACL. Right. And they had talent. They brought a lot of talent from James Madison, and they had money. They didn't have Mark Cuban money, right? But they had money. They got CJ West, a stud defensive lineman that Rutgers wanted, and Indiana outbid them for him. right? Indiana is a very rich athletic department. They have rich alums that were contributing before this, and Cignetti got some of those assurances before he even arrived at Indiana.
Right.
So while they didn't have the backing financially that Cignetti had last year, they still had some money. And I think there is some credit to be given to Cignetti, who is a serial winner. He's won everywhere he went. He is an elite coach that for some reason nobody took a chance on until Indiana, right? James Madison took the chance, but it's James Madison. It's a winning factory. They would win with me as head coach. But Indiana was the first program that was like, all right, let's give this guy who's 60 years old, who's coached under Saban, who has won literally everywhere he's been, whose father is a legendary coach. Let's give him a chance, see what he does. What's there to lose? And maybe there's a lesson here that being bold, yes, it could have flopped and been disastrous. Yeah, but every time you hire someone as Indiana, it's been disastrous. So why not get a chance? Maybe it's a lesson for other programs in similar spots that you might as well, give it a shot. You never know what happens when you roll the dice.
Gun to your head. Who wins the playoff?
Well, the smart choice is Ohio State. I think they're probably still the most talented team, even though they looked a bit soft against Indiana. I don't know if that's the right word. Overthought themselves, running 4 tight ends when you need a big conversion, leaving their best wide receivers on the bench. I think Oregon is my sneaky pick. Like if I had to pick a dark horse, like I think this is the year for Oregon.
Of course.
And if you watch, I don't know if you watched the Big 12 championship game, Texas Tech's defensive front is unbelievable. I know we talked about them costing $7 million. They got every penny's worth. They are unreal. So they could be, if they're able to scrunch enough offense together, their defense plays at a level high enough that they can beat anybody. They're unreal. I'm
legit excited because I do not know who's going to win. I suspect, and as of 2 weeks ago, I thought Ohio State, and I wonder now, getting that out of their way, getting that crappy game, their bad one out of the way will actually help them. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. I mean, Sayin did not look good in that game. I don't know. Yeah, it's tough.
Just throw the ball to Jeremiah Smith. Just throw him the ball.
It'd be easy
why
enough
are
to
coaches?
do that.
Why do they overthink things so much? Just throw him the ball. Who cares if he's double covered? He's going to catch the ball. Just throw. He caught a Hail Mary in the last second between 4 defenders. Just throw him the ball.
Yes. Totally. All right. We had another money question. It's good transition. We're transitioning well in this pod. Bunch of people have asked. Shiano seemed quite confident about money. Has there been any rumbling as to the number raised thus far? Okay. There have been rumblings, and this is the general consensus, was that Rutgers had gone into this process with Kelly Zinn thinking it needed $7 million to compete in the portal. That since went up to $9 or $10 million. And the response that I have heard is that Kelly Zinn's, okay, we'll get it. If they don't have it, they'll get it. There's a level of confidence that Rutgers will have an extra $9 to $10 million to spend, and that is above the cap money to spend in the portal. Which, I mean, given where this program was, that to me would end that discussion. And finally put it away in the corner of can the Rutgers? Well, they can't get. They're producing miracles with what the resources they have. They will have resources. So yeah, we'll see if that's the case in a couple of weeks when the portal opens, and if they're beating out Oregon for players or if they're beating out James Madison for players.
Okay. Again, you hear that money, and that's good. That's a lot of good progress, right? And I think that if they're able to put that together, which again, to your point, it sounds like they're going to be able to come close, if not meet that mark, then they will be competitive with teams like probably Minnesota, Iowa. They're not going to be at Oregon's level.
They'll be, I know, but they'll be higher than Minnesota. They'll be high. They will be, yes, they will be a middle of the. They're in the middle of the pack. They will not be last. Be 8 or 9. They're not Ohio State. We get. They're not Michigan. They're not. We totally understand that. Yes,
that's my point. My point is that Shiano's almost miraculous comment signaled to me that Rutgers was essentially last in the Big Ten, if not second to last.
Right.
Nowhere close to the middle of the pack teams. Right. So if you're able to build that up to the middle of the pack, then when you play a team like Minnesota, Iowa, Washington, you should expect to be competitive in those games and win at least half of them, right? That then there's no money excuse for losing, going 0 for 4 against those teams, right? But I also caution you shouldn't beat them down if they don't beat Oregon, Ohio State for players, if they don't you
Right,
know,
I
compete in those
understand.
games.
Yes, Oregon's a bad example, but you know what I'm saying. This should not be a shop in the discount bin year. This should be we need an elite Big Ten defensive lineman. Here's who we got. That's we should know. We should be able to know this when this portal opens. It should happen quickly. There should be players identified. They've been scouting all year. They know their needs. We know their need. Everyone knows what they need. This is not some sort of like this should be if this is a real operation now. It should happen pretty quickly. Like, all right, there's no believe me, the conversations are happening. These players have agents. There's no like, it's the NFL free agency the same way, legal tampering period, all that stuff. I think we'll have a pretty good idea pretty quickly.
If you want to know if they're getting splash players, like if Rutgers starts getting players reported on by On3 and ESPN,
Right.
like if they're because most of these kids they're getting are under the radar for the most part. If you see the national guys starting to pay attention to what Rutgers is getting, then they're making splash. But the same way they need to make splash transfer additions, they also have to be they have to moneyball it a bit and still get those smart under the radar. The thing we've been preaching about basketball all the time. They got to find a nice mix here to maximize their dollars.
Right. Okay. Absolutely. Another player sort of personnel question. Shiano mentioned not recruiting JUCO players, but don't think anyone follow up with the question as to why not. Why do you think that's the case? I didn't hear that comment. That's funny. What was the origin of that?
Well, I can't remember if he was asked directly about JUCO, but like JUCO doesn't make sense. One, because academics, like it's always been hard to kind of get. That was Shiano's point. Like the transcripts don't always translate for a place like Rutgers, and that's always been kind of an issue long before NIL. But now JUCO is where is it on the rung, right? Like there's D2, there's kids in the transfer portal from the lower levels. There's FCS. Like how far down do you have to go? There's high school. Like the high school market is more accessible these days than it was 10 years ago because the really good kids aren't getting picked up as often because teams they're loading their rosters with transfer portal kids. So I just don't understand why you would want a JUCO kid. And the good JUCO kids probably go to a place like New Mexico State, like Diego Pavia. Then you prove yourself at that level, and then you go to a Rutgers. And I guess like the last point is, has Rutgers had a successful JUCO kid in 25 years? Like, do you remember a single one? I don't.
No.
Like, I could have a bad memory here, but it's not like there was a JUCO pipeline that, and I don't think many programs have a JUCO pipeline. It's just not exactly a fruitful market, I would say.
All right. The other questions all dealt with the running back room, which we addressed, and the DC targets, which we sort of addressed in the best we could. And of course, we got this. We received one basketball question. You can guess what the question was. How bad does basketball season look for Kelly Zinn to fire Pikes? Here we are. That's where we're at already here. Let's talk about what happened this week. This week in basketball, 47 minutes and 55 seconds into this podcast, they lost to Purdue and they lost to Michigan. And I don't know. Like I will say this, like the Michigan game, I'm just gonna kind of like that. They're the only thing I learned from the Michigan game is if I still had the FanDuel app, I would have let's put $20 on them to win because that's kind of what's happening there. What's your take? I mean, did you feel the same way about the Michigan game?
My take is that every one of my post-game live shows devolved to this question at some point, right? So
Yes,
the Michigan game was a bit quicker than others, but the thing with Michigan is this: if we're being charitable, Michigan beat Gonzaga by 40 points in Las Vegas.
Right.
The Michigan-Gonzaga final of the Players Era Festival was billed as the best non-conference game in the regular season in years. And then Michigan was beating Gonzaga by 20 points within 10 minutes. Okay. So I'm not going to ding Rutgers for losing by 40 to Michigan when other teams are. And again, we're beyond the point of moral victories. We're in the 11th year of Steve Pikiell's era. We shouldn't praise them for only losing by 16 points to Purdue. But given the talent on the roster, that's kind of what you hope for in a game like this. When you're playing a national title contender, just don't get embarrassed, right? They did that against Purdue. They didn't do that against Michigan, whatever. Now, here, the next three games, to me, are really important. I think you have to, at the very least, be competitive against Seton Hall. If you beat Seton Hall, that changes the tenure of the season. That changes a bit of the outlook. You're probably going to be a pretty sizable underdog. But whatever. Be competitive against Seton Hall. Don't get embarrassed by your rival. Like that's a big thing here.
Right.
As bad as the team is this year, as a program, you should have enough pride that you don't get blown off the floor against Seton Hall, because awful Seton Hall teams. Last year's team was awful. And
this team is much better, but they're not. They're certainly not world beaters. They're good. They're really nice. He's done a nice job in rebuilding that team.
My point is that last year's Seton Hall team was so bad that we're comparing this current Rutgers team to that team.
Yes.
And they went into the rack, and Rutgers needed a buzzer beater from Dylan Harper to beat them.
Number 1, 2 pick in the draft. Yeah.
My point is that Seton Hall was that bad, and they still were competitive against Rutgers. Rutgers has to do the same thing to the Seton Hall team.
Yes.
And then you have to win the last 2 tomato can games against Penn and Delaware State handily. You cannot be in a dogfight in those games. This is your last chance to get convincing wins for pretty much the entire rest of the year. Yeah. You have to show life and win that game convincingly. Otherwise, you're entering Big Ten play as a dead team walking.
Yeah. The problem I have, and watching it, and again, like I said it up front, Michigan's on a different level. I think they could win it all. I have not seen Duke play yet. I understand. I've not seen it, but still, is this just like the things we were promised are not true? Like, going to be a scrappy effort defensive team. They stink defensively. Like they haven't shown, like every shot. Like forget the fact how talented Michigan is. I get it. Every single shot is open. Every 3-pointer, every layup around the basket. Like there's still no rim protection. There's still no perimeter defense. He's going to the bench to just searching for someone who can do something. I don't know. Like I'm struggling for proof of concept. I like the fact he is playing the young guys significant minutes now. Like we're kind of like moving on a little bit, and let's see what Woolley, let's see what, some of these kids have to offer. But I mean, the problem with that is that there's really no guarantees those kids are going to be on the roster in 3 years, that they're going to develop. It is tough. It is tough to watch this.
It is bleak. It's going to be a very long.
That's the right word, bleak. There's not a glimmer. There's not it's like, show me a glimmer of, give me something you can hold on to. Give me something.
The thing is, they can't defend the rim because their starting center is Emmanuel Bole. They can't defend the perimeter because all their guards are my height, right? These are things that we knew were going to be issues going into the season. It goes back to roster construction, right? So as good of a coach you can be on the floor, this team was essentially dead on arrival.
And those two guys you mentioned, Bole, he looks really good against Delaware State, whoever the hell they were playing. Tariq Francis, he was a nice little player, and I hate to say that word, but against some of the early competition, now look who they're playing against. It's like,
right. Well, look, you'd be a fool to listen to any of the preseason comments made by Steve Peichel, given what he's said in the past and them not coming to fruition. And you'd be a fool to take whatever they did in the first 4 games and think that those positive things would translate to the Big Ten, right? That if you bought into that, that's kind of on you, right? I just think this is what this team was always going to be.
Right.
And to answer the question, which we have not addressed, how bad does it have to get? There's no win or loss total. That here's what has to happen. It has to get so bad that someone with enough money is able to say, I'm tired of this. I can't take any more of this. Here is the money you need to fire the guy. Get me a new coach. That's bottom line. That's it. That's as bad as it has to get. And you tell me what you think. I think the only way that happens is if this is like a 7-win team. If they go 1 for 19 in the Big Ten. Like that's the only way. And even then, I just don't know if people want to chase good money with bad. And, I don't see it. What do you think? How bad does that get?
Yeah. So this is really funny because I can imagine if you're coming to me and I'm Kelly Zinn, I'm going to do now, Brian, I understand why you might want to invest your money in that, but maybe we could redirect that toward the football program. Like that would be what I would say if I were Kelly, and we're going to give you 20. You got $20 million to give us. Let's reinvest that. But yeah, that's what it would have to happen. This is the only thing that I have. And Like at least like with Greg Shannon, like you like there's some proof, there's some evidence that he's competitive in the Big Ten despite the lack of he's won before. He's the guy who architected the program originally. Like this doesn't really exist with Steve Peichel, and I know he had a couple of nice years. I get it. He won here in a completely different world than college basketball. I just wonder if it does get Seton Hall last year bad. If President Wynn, the man who's standing up there with the T-shirt, Wynn, if there's not going to be some level of the feeling being, all right, this is not going to be better next year. It's not that cheaper next year. Like I just want, like that's my only thing. I think it's 10%. I really do think it's unlikely to happen because I do think they'll scrap out some wins in the Big Ten. There'll be something you can hang your hat on. There'll be something where you can say, oh, look, Steve's won here before. He's been up. He had Dylan Harper here a couple of years ago. Like there'll be something to hold your hat on, I think. But I'm not prepared to say there's no chance. I think there is a chance. I think there's a 10% chance right now. But if it gets ugly, and we're talking here in February, and they're sitting there at 1-13 in the Big Ten or something, and the results are like that game against Iowa, if they had one of those games, ooh.
The thing is, look, I think we all agree that it's going to be a matter of when, not if, Steve Peichel is eventually fired, right? The only reason he's still the head coach after this season is because the contract makes it untenable. Now, for him to turn this around and salvage himself and to play out the rest of his contract, he essentially has to change fundamentally how he runs the program, how he recruits, how he builds a roster, how he plays offensively, his loyalty to his coaching staff. Like heads are going to have to roll after the season. And I think that, Brandon Knight is safe because of his contract, but heads are going to you have to get an assistant coach here that, changes the way they operate. And essentially, if you want to do all that, like if you're asking the head coach to change fundamentally how he's done it for 10 years, you probably just have to get a new coach, right? So it's all a matter, again, of how long are they going to be able to tolerate this and how long is it going to take for them to get the money, right? Or how long is it going to take for the buyout to get low enough that they can eat the contract and fire him? Rutgers is poor. I cannot emphasize that enough. I didn't mention this in the NIL. I forgot to mention this. I'm sure you saw the story. Michigan State got one guy to donate $400 million. I want you to consider this. Rutgers is clawing its way to make $10 million to support its football program this year. This guy committed $100 million to NIL himself. $100 million, 10 times, a decade of what it would take to raise Kelly's in that money. Yeah. They got from one guy. So when you're competing against that, when you're competing against Illinois, which got a $300 million gift a couple months ago as well, when you're competing against Ohio State, which prints money, Oregon, which has Nike in its backyard, when you compare all that to what Rutgers has, let's be realistic about what could happen. Unless President Wynn opens the university coffers and says, you know what, take this money from the endowment, which I guess is possible. Unless that happens, or unless some donor who for some reason didn't want to give his money to the greatest possible team in basketball, in Rutgers basketball history last year, but decides, you know what, I don't want to spend my money on NIL. Let's spend my money on paying a coach not to be here. Unless that happens, the guy's going to be here another year, right? Yeah. So please, I'm begging you guys, stop asking me if they're going to fire the guy. Stop, please.
Not going away after games like that. You know what my first reaction to the Michigan State thing was? It wasn't like, oh my gosh, that's gonna. I mean, think about what Rutgers would do. My first reaction was like, can you imagine having that much money and deciding what you needed to spend it on was like, we need better facilities in Michigan. Like that's what your priority was. We're going to spend $400 million. What you could have like cured a disease. Like what would $400 million get you in the city of Detroit for poverty mitigation, like feeding the poor. Like it blows my mind. It's just incredible, man.
Why the guy didn't even go to Michigan State. He didn't even go there.
He didn't go to Michigan State? Where'd he go? Right. If you said Rutgers. Perfect. Actually, he went to Rutgers. Oh, yeah. Okay.
He went to Western Michigan, which if I'm Western Michigan, I am punching a hole in the wall.
There's somebody who did a poor job at Western Michigan. There's a guy right now in the development office like, oh, my God, he was my account. This guy was my account. Gave him a hard time on his parking upgrade.
You could have gotten Western Michigan into the Big Ten with $400 million, pulling SMU. But instead, he wanted to help out the Spartans. As far as a guy having enough money, that $400 million he can just donate without an issue, is one of the many symptoms of why capitalism is a horrendous thing. And,
wow, here he is. Mondami's back on the podcast. I love it.
I mean, how we
59
justify a
minutes
system
in.
where there was a photo at the Michigan State game against Duke. Him and Matt Ishba, who was a former walk-on under Tom Izzo and has donated hundreds of millions of dollars, owns an NBA team, just talking to each other on the sideline. Billions of dollars, more money than like multiple countries' GDPs, just shaking hands and talking Spartan basketball on the court at the Breslin Center. I mean, how do you view that and not get nauseous?
Comrade Fonseca wants to redistribute that wealth to some smaller schools.
This is
going to be a bread line.
To wrap this back to, there's bread lines under capitalism. I don't know if you've seen those photos. Anyway, to wrap this back to Rutgers basketball, Lino Mark, Max from the Are You Screwed podcast made this joke in the offseason, and I've been dying to use it since, that Lino Marks is distributing the means of the basketball when he has an assist. But I don't think he's had an assist this year. Can we please get someone to make, like the communist leader flag, where you have like Mao, you have Stalin, and then at the end you put Lino Marks? Someone please do that. Anyway.
There's an NIL opportunity right there for Lino Marks. You should do that.
The DSA will sponsor the Rutgers basketball team.
Oh,
let's do it.
It's good. It only took us 58 minutes before we went off the rail. Let's end there. A little Marxism, Leningrad here in the podcast. Thanks for listening. What?
You want to talk about wrestling? You want to invoke the spirit of Pat Laney?
Okay. What do we got? I don't know what to talk about. Tell me what I should be talking about with wrestling.
Wrestling wrestled. I was gonna say played. They wrestled number 10 NC State. They were up 6-3 early, and then they lost 27-10. So just wanted to bring that up. Another opportunity for guest of the podcast, Scott Cadale. They had a top 10 chance. They are number 13, so they are a top 15 team, but they had another chance to get that signature win. They didn't. They host Oklahoma on Saturday at the same exact time as the Seton Hall game. So I'm curious what the attendance will be like for that. But first opportunity missed, but they have more the rest of the year.
And I saw the women's basketball scores at one point was like 50-12 or something against Iowa.
We didn't talk about that. I mean,
Caitlin Clark's not playing there anymore as far as I remember. So no.
The men's and women's team lost by a combined 84 points on Saturday. 84 points. And I think people look before. I know we all talk about Steve Peichel getting fired, and to some extent, people are calling for Schiano's head. I think if we're doing a power ranking of coaches that are on the hottest seat in this department, I mean, Koku's Washington seat must be just a forest on fire at this point.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Totally.
So if there's anyone that's going to be fired this offseason, I don't know if Kelly Zinn is going to fire anyone after her first full year. I really don't. I don't know if she wants to give everyone a mulligan or not. But if she is going to fire everyone, or fire someone, I should say, I think Koki Washington has to be the prime candidate, right?
100%. Yeah, I think it's if you have to give me odds, like I said, 10% on Steve Peichel, I'm going to go like 75% on Cookies Washington. I think that's over. Yeah, and it's just cheaper, less money involved. I think it's clearly it's something. It's just not working. So, yeah, that was a bad hire from the beginning, unfortunately. So. Pat Hobbs, the legacy that keeps on getting. And there's something we're not going to talk about on this podcast. All right, let's sign up there.
You found true love. You found true love.
I said we weren't going to talk about it. But yeah, apparently, who knew?
We'll save it for Valentine's Day.
I love it. The things you can read on ninja.com. All right. Signing off there. I don't know when we'll be back. We'll be back eventually to talk some more Rutgers sports here. Hopefully happier topics. Thanks for listening.